Kinetics has been made in association with Road Race Parts. Top quality, best prices, no compromise. Head to roadraceparts.com to get parts for your racing vehicles.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Velocity Kinetics. Got a slightly, maybe you could call it a slightly reactionary video today in light of what's happened so far in Formula 1. Excuse my, well, I'm aware I've put on, so I am doing my best to try and, excuse me, nearly dropped the phone on the floor. Doing my best to lose again, but anyway, that aside, the current state of F1, it's mental, shall we say. Now, Australia was pretty good in the sense that Mercedes didn't have it all their own way. They had to work for it, which is something that I was hoping to see more. I'd have preferred it Williams be the one showing Mercedes how it was done, but as long as Mercedes aren't waltzing away with it, then there's hope for other engine manufacturers, I guess, is probably the good way round it. Oh, excuse me. So, yeah, it created some hope in the race. And then you had the massive accident of Alonso, but then again the general, which was quite shocking and amazing, he walked away from it. But then you got the improvement of Honda, you've got Haas sneaking in, taking, was it 6 points or 6th place, was it? They got decent haul of points in their debut, which is not a common thing to have done. I think Tyrrell and Brawn, off the top of my head, any teams to have done that as a debut in a brand new team. Although Brawn is arguable because it wasn't, strictly speaking, a brand new team, but we'll argue semantics a later date over a pint or something rather than in my front room on a very manky day in Middlesbrough. The farce is qualifying. Now, the previous system, it was 3 sessions, knock out a certain number of cars each time, JD job done. If the checkered flag went, if you crossed the line before the checkered flag went, that was it. You could still finish your lap and maybe drag yourself out, which could then mean that someone who's finished ahead of you and already passed the checkered flag, already completed their lap, could still be knocked out even though they thought they were safe. This new system is sort of retaining the 3 sessions with knockout and eliminations. Like, to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. And in Australia we saw in Q1 the Q3 even, sorry, beg your pardon. I was getting muddled up because Q1 so that's the last bit. Yeah, anyway, you had like 3-4 minutes at the end of the session with no cars driving, no one on track, just sort of viewing an empty track. And even then, during a lot of that, I hadn't realised I was doing it until today's qualifying for Bahrain, when Ben Edwards said it and David Coulthard said it on the Channel 4 coverage. It was, you spend more time watching a little clock in the corner than you are out watching the track. Like, I hadn't realised I was doing that until they pointed out, which was a very valid point, that we're spending a lot of time watching empty tracks and people can't put in a rebuttal lap, if that makes sense. The problem is to fix the system, as Christian Horner said again on the Channel 4 coverage, and I don't often agree with Christian Horner because I don't know why, he just irritates me, but he said that on paper it's a good system, and yes, on paper it is a very good system. In practice, it is a load of. Is basically it. It's, you can be on your lap, be half, and then the countdown starts for you to complete. But then if you're on the countdown, if you don't improve, you can't then improve again. So for instance, you didn't have enough KERS stored up on your first lap, but through pushing the car that lap you've managed to somehow harness enough, you then can't go around again and put a rebuttal lap. So to fix the system, there's too many tweaks and complications to do it, because then they were like, oh, you can't then finish your lap and things like. No, that's a good point. They should be able to finish the lap, but then the other person's then got to have a sub rebuttal. and then you're going to want to go, well, actually, he got to put in another lap and improve it, I want to put my lap back in. And so I appreciate on one front, it's got to be, no, clock's dead, you got to get it right. So they're right in that sense, and I'm liking seeing cars going straight out in Q1. I didn't like seeing the track empty for minutes at a time. Now, I understand why they've done it. They're trying to shake things up. I think more or less it's to sort of make the top cars, in theory, do a bit more work over the race weekend. Now, again, the only way to fix the situation, to sort of try and bring in more influence and things into the sport or into the race, would then to make it too artificial. Excuse me. So you could then say do a grid flip. So Hamilton, you're first. Congratulations, you're going to the back. You got to work for it, and like, it's not a bad idea in that sense, because a lot of those front-running cars don't actually like it when they're stuck behind another car. No, Red Bull a few years ago were they just couldn't work when they were behind another car. They might be able to hold someone behind them off, but they were never able to close the gap. But then again, you then run the risk of, as mentioned, artificially influencing the outcome. You run the risk of the top teams as frequently crashing out, which in some ways it wouldn't be a bad idea. It wouldn't be bad to see Mercedes scrambling around for parts, or Ferrari scrambling around for parts, because they've been taken out so many times. But then again, the advantage is, I guess, you would get a lot of the front-running egotistical drivers sort of remembering, actually, you know, I could very easily be at the back, and I have to respect everyone I'm overtaking, rather than getting, oh, get out of the way, get out of the way. I don't, yeah. It's really hard to say how it needs to be changed. Now, when the qualifying was on, oh, for God's sake, excuse me. Ugh. Now, when the qualifying was on, I was was watching it mostly, but I was checking to see, because me being quite a Volvo fan, Volvo are back in WTCC, they're back in World Touring Cars with the S60 Polestar run by Cyan Racing, and that managed to score a second place qualification on its debut. So, yeah, I was a tiny bit distracted and a tiny bit pleased. Don't know if it's going to convert, but who knows. But, even Touring Cars has a 3-session system. Now, you could maybe try and implement some more complicated rules, maybe from something like Touring Cars, with weight, ballast adding and subtracting, etc., to sort of performance level, make the cars go on a performance level. But F1's all about engineering, and most people say, well, the best cars got to be at the front. Like, of course. And as I've mentioned before, and I'm sure David Coulthard and people have mentioned it on the coverage. Every year, every time there's a regulation change, someone nails it. It just happened to be Brawn and Red Bull last time. It happens to be Mercedes this time. There's not a lot that we can do to influence it without causing a problem. Now, the proposal I had whilst I was watching, I'm not going to say it's good, because you know, that's massively egotistical and narcissistic of me to say, oh, I've had this idea, and because I had it, I think it's brilliant. I think my idea's got legs, because it sort of takes what they've tried to do and sort of modifies it a little bit. Now, you could still stick with an elimination style system, but rather than have the 3 sessions, but the only problem I have with my idea, I'll say this up front, it's almost like another race. So, give with one, take with the other. The sessions that we have at the moment, it's 16 minutes, 15 minutes, 14 minutes, which, my maths failing me, it's about, give or take, 45 minutes qualifying. So, what my idea would be to have, say, maybe no less than half an hour, but certainly no more than 45 minutes. But basically, have it so every single car, unless it's in the pits for repairs, fuel, a setup change that they must be very visibly being done, or tyres, it has to be out there. It has to be putting in the laps. And let's say, for instance, for instance, where in FP3 Stoffel Van Dorn was stuck in the garage because of an oil leak, or oil spill, actually, wasn't it? It's not necessarily a leak, it was a spill. But either way, because he was stuck there through and couldn't go out, that would be fine under my idea. He'd be it would be fine. But as soon as it's fixed, out, get going. Or someone comes in and goes, "Oh, I've massively flat spot myself." Fine, brr, brr, new one's on, out. You can't sort of just be sat there watching the timing boards and things. It's got to be. You could come in and say, "Right, team, can you? I need some more camber. I need some stiffer suspension on the front. I need slightly looser on the rear, and take some downforce off." But then a team have got to be very visibly doing it. It can't sort of be a case of you just sat there watching the screens. Now, granted, I don't watch the pit lane feed that much, so maybe in qualifying when the car is sat there, they are actually doing a lot of things to it. Maybe it's just sat there for sitting there, I don't know. But my idea is that the cars have basically just got to be out there, and no elimination, just old school hardcore racing. Hardcore racing. This is where the problem of it being another race comes in. The problem is you might have Mercedes go hell for leather and knacker themselves for the race, or you might have someone Maldonado it. You might have someone roll it, smash it, crash it to a point where it can't race, which is well, it can still happen in standard quali, even on the old format, but it is less likely to happen. Obviously, with this one where you've got to constantly pounding around, you might make a mistake. It will also mean the drivers may need to be fitter to be able to take doing that without the brake. The theory behind the idea, as to why I think it might work, is you'll have all the cars out there, as I've mentioned several times. I realise I'm sort of half repeating myself quite a lot, but you have all the cars out there. So you've got the Manners and the Saubers and everything else potentially causing missteps and problems for the other cars. So they might suddenly be. So there'd be no blue flags in this. So you won't be told get out the way unless it's quite obvious that you're nursing a problem. You'll be and you're coming in. There'd have to be some sort of mode on the steering wheel that communicates to the FIA that you've got a problem, and so you'll be blue flagged to get out the way, sort of thing. But otherwise, you're out there. So if Hamilton, for instance, is stuck behind Haryanto, tough. He's not moving for you. He is staying there because he's on a quality lap. And if that so happens that Haryanto somehow qualifies faster than the Merc, then that is what happens. And if for some reason Lewis Hamilton can't get past him in 45 minutes of qualifying, then there is a serious problem with the Merc, or the Manor has somehow become fantastic overnight. Now, it would mean that some cars that are brilliant over long runs will just be able to bash it out. So in many ways, this will still favour the Mercedes, because they did the most number of laps over winter testing. I think Williams are quite high up there as well, though, as were Ferrari. So it will hurt some of this new system might hurt some of the smaller teams, or some of the teams that are trying to run a more radical design, ones that sort of really do need that break in qualifying. They can't run at full chat all the time. I know it probably would hurt Honda quite a lot. I assume it would hurt Honda quite a lot. Now, the alternative would be to go back to the old system and then do a grid flip, or a random flip on the grid, so it's not always guaranteed to know what's going to happen with the grid. So almost like a drawing lot system, sort of a. Then it's too much of a gimmick, isn't it? It won't be like Formula E's fan boost in the sense of you vote for the person they get more boost, but you could vote for someone you don't like, maybe, and have them pulled backwards. But then again, a lot of people, for instance, with how unpopular Maldonado was, for example, he probably would have been the fall guy every time. So, or there's a certain people that are available to sort of, hey, this week you've got Pascal Wehrlein, and he is if you vote for him, if he wins the most votes, he'll be moved up 3 places. Lewis Hamilton this week, if he's on pole, he gets dragged back 5 places, sort of thing. But then again, it goes back to that influencing it too much. It's sort of adding too much of a. You don't want to add a gimmick, is basically it. I think either going back to the old system, maybe you could mix all three, the old system, the new system we're trying to implement, and sort of my idea, and sort of say, look, it's going to be done in 3 sessions, knockout, but you're allowed to do a rebuttal lap. So if you're on a lap, that still counts. But if you don't beat it, then you're out, sort of thing. And then the clock starts again on the person above, but then that potentially elongates the sessions. So that'll put more importance on getting out there at the start. Alternatively, just after so many minutes, it becomes a bloody free-for-all. But that actually might not be a bad idea. But I would also say that in this, everyone's engine mode, you can't, mind you, it'd be part of what I want to get rid of anyway. No goddamn engine modes. Engine mode for coming into the pit, engine mode for when you're not in the pit. That would be it. So you're running at full chat. If you're not wanting to run at full chat, then fine. Go up a gear earlier. Go up the gears earlier. Shorten the gearing on your car if you don't want to do that. Increase the gearing on the car so then it's not going at full chat so much. That's what I would love to see. But I think what is more the problem with the qualifying system is how no one tested it. It was just, hey, it's on paper. Hey, first race, here we go. No one, if there was going to be a change, they should have done it whenever all the teams were available in testing, and said, look, and said to everyone, look, we want to test this new qualification system, so we're going to have a mini mock-up of it. This means that I appreciate it's going to interrupt your programs, but because it's going to interrupt your programs, we're going to do it after testing. So if we're doing testing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning is dedicated to this, and that's it. Now some people and it's sort of and the FRA can say it's free testing. Wink, wink, wink. It could be done that way with the wink, wink, nudge. It could have been done that way with the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and teams could have got more running out of it. Not official testing. It was as such really, or brought the old cars back. Sort of say, look, the teams that got a V8 powered car, bring them back, and we're gonna borrow them for this session, so then no one's accused of running new parts on a new car, which probably wouldn't have been too bad of an idea either. But it's what I think what annoys me a lot really with the F1 at the moment is everyone has these ideas. It's a bit like what it's like at work. Someone has an idea, someone else thinks it's a good idea, and they look at the logistics and the paperwork for it, and yes, that's all deemed a very good idea. And then it suddenly becomes real, and no one's tested it properly in the middle. Those people who aren't involved are the ones making the decision. Or the ones that are so high up the ladder that it doesn't really affect them. Like people like CVC or FOM, the rights holders, it's sort of a not asked, we'll find another way of making money. Sort of a argument, which is quite an annoyance. I hope they abandon it after Bahrain, because I got annoyed watching let's be honest, in Q2 the session died off quite early, and in Q3 the session died off relatively early there as well. I'll try and lay out my. I realise that I keep doing these videos. When I do these videos, I want to do them short and they turn out long. But blah, blah, blah. I'll try and lay out my proposal in a straightforward manner, or as straightforward as I can. First, engine modes to the max. You got free reign on your tyre choice. We'll say 45 minutes just to pick a relatively easy number to work with. 45-minute long session. Your car must be out there unless you can tell unless you've got proof to the FIA what you're doing. So, for instance, if you're changing your tyres, so it's immediately obvious, or refueling, which is immediately obvious, or the car is in pieces and still being, there's a problem with it that meant it's being repaired and it's immediately obvious, and that's also fine. You can't just be sat in the garage watching times and picking when to go. You've got to go. No blue flags unless someone's had a problem and they're not and aren't paying much attention to who's in the mirror. It's just sort of a prompt like, I know you're damaged, but get out the way. People are coming. No blue flags. And that's it, basically. Just go for it. Because in many ways, think about it, it's just like another practice session if we do it that way. Practice to a point, that is. But then I would add in probably another layer to that. If it turns to wet, then depending on how much it's raining, so if it goes from dry to wet, then the session can either be called off, and if people are happy, as the general consensus is the rain is staying, then it can either be suspended for setup changes and tyre changes, or you'll be permitted to sit in the garage to see how the weather's going to go, because if it's a passing shower, then that's it. But even then, I'd be tempted to get people back out on the rain tyres as quickly as possible. I would say with 15 minutes to go, 15 to 20 minutes left to go in the session, you are then locked into your setup. So no late last minute setup changes, unless the conditions change. So unless suddenly it's like, actually no, and we've got reason to believe that the rain is staying for the whole week, whole race day as well, then you can be permitted to change the setup, because then it won't be in parc fermé. I wouldn't want to introduce any sort of gimmick system similar to fan boost, simply because, as I mentioned, it'd be too much of a gimmick. It will just backfire quite spectacularly. That's really about it. I think. And no expectation from the faster cars that the slow ones will get out of their way, because in that situation the slow ones will be on their, the slower cars will be on their qualifying runs as well. So it's basically tough titty. You're one of the best racing drivers out there. You should be able to pass a slower car. You should be able to work out how much you're gaining on them to try and use them as a slipstream to then boost down the next straight. But I'm just an armchair critic. I'm like lots of people. I am just one of these people who watches F1 because we like F1, and our opinion doesn't really matter at all to Bernie Ecclestone because he's a cunt. Long and short of it. We'll end it there, but otherwise I'll probably keep ranting. But hopefully the qualification changes. Hopefully for the better. Hopefully Honda makes some forward movement. I am amazed at how much the space after the top two teams is closed. I thought it would have been. I thought Williams still would have had a comfortable cushion, and I say Williams are still nearly at the top, if not at the top of that pile, but it's not by much. Because Red Bull's there, Red Bull is there, Force India's there, Haas is closer than people would like to admit. Toro Rosso, Scuderia Toro Rosso have done a fantastic job, and be watchful for them on the track. It's going to be close. It's just a shame that Ferrari and Red Bull are that far ahead that they're not that close, so it can't be that much closer for everyone to enjoy it. But I say, without implementing some sort of touring car style weight hampering system or performance adjustment system, there's not a lot we can do with like I said, the only way to do it for the FIA to say, right, okay, we're cutting Merck's electric power during the race and we're going to do that when they don't know it, which not fair, bit gimmicky, but as long as it meant Williams would win, I don't care. But we'll have to keep it fair and sporting. Anyway, let's say we'll hope the race actually goes better than the qualifying. We'll hope that Lewis Hamilton does not waltz off into the sunset. If he does, can he at least have Nico Rosberg in his tail and winding him up, or one of the Ferraris winding him up? Hope Honda can keep their upward swing. I'm not much of a McLaren fan, but I've always liked Honda engineering. Whether it's been in Formula 1 or on the road, their engineering's been nuts. For instance, in the Honda S2000, the 2-litre 4-cylinder non-turbo that spun to 9,000 RPM. That's sort of a holy shit. And the Type R vehicles with the VTEC system, that's just it's just insane, and all the VTEC systems that just haven't gone wrong and still around. They're a bloody good engineering company. Or Asimo, the robot. You gotta want Honda. I want Honda to do better, because I want. Whilst I can go out and buy a Renault, whilst I can go out and buy a Mercedes. Mercedes is still very high end, it's very white collar, shall we say. It's even now, it's still a very white collar car. And Renault it can be white, it can be blue, and they've not got someone like, I don't mean to sort of stereotype and be mean to various manufacturers, but Ford has been more often a blue collar car than a white collar car. Toyota has been more of a blue collar car than a white collar car, without bringing in the complexities of Lexus and then things that Ford have owned. Just as their own brand, Ford has been more of a blue collar workers car. Toyota's been more of a blue collar workers car. Honda is more of a blue collar workers car. Renault have had the white collar workers car and the blue collar workers car. Mercedes has been very much white collars. Ferrari, the fancy people don't even have shirts on their collars. I just want one of the little guy sort of engineering people to be doing well. And I'm hoping on a separate form of motorsport, I'm hoping Volvo do well in their return to World Touring Cars. Now people might question why I'm rooting for Volvo when Honda have been in there longer, Chevy, I think BMW is still in it, there might be. Certainly Citroen have been dominating it the last few years. Simple. Volvo have got the only road-going based unit. They've got 400 horsepower. 400! In a front-wheel drive car with basically a production engine. Granted, it's boosted by a massive turbocharger, but still, like, when was the last time I heard of a 400 brake horsepower Volvo? The closest I've heard was the 300 horsepower Volvo V70R from several years ago, and the S60R, and the recent S60 and V60 Polestar editions that went to production with the 350 horsepower. Like, I want a 400 horsepower Volvo. I just want a Volvo in general. I like my Suzuki, but I want a Volvo. I like my Suzuki, but I need a slightly bigger one. Anyway, that's a separate argument and a separate conversation for another day. But let's see how the race goes. As I mentioned, let's see how the race goes tomorrow. Let's hope Volvo do well in the touring cars. Look after yourselves. Take care. Check out Road Race Parts for any racing gear and equipment that you require, and check out premiernorth.co.uk for first aid training requirements. Give us an email, info@premiernorth.co.uk. We'll contact yourself and we'll see what sort of first aid training we can provide you with.
Velocity Kinetics has been made in association with Road Race Parts. Top quality, best prices, no compromise. Head to roadraceparts.com to get parts for your racing vehicles now.